I almost expected I would see him again tonight. I looked at Grandpa, Glimmer's hand very warm in mine as we walked back to the house. Grandpa had noticed, but if he felt anything about it, he didn't voice it. Glimmer, for her part, had explained that she simply didn't want me getting lost, so she thought she might help me get back home. After the night I'd had, I was glad for the steadying throb it made in my chest when my heart beat. "Who?" I asked, keeping pace with Grandpa as we walked. "The snake handler. I thought he might show up when I needed him again. Silly, huh? He'd be even older than I am, a shriveled mummy of a man." I considered asking him why the Weldergeist had showed up, but realized that I didn't need to. We had been at our most vulnerable, our most willing to make a deal, and maybe he had known that. Grandpa didn't need to think about his old benefactor any more than he had to today. He was still bouncing from his victory over the old foe, and I was still flying high as Glimmer's soft skin pressed against my sweaty hand. We could think about that later. Today, we were victorious, and that was all that mattered. "What did you do after he helped you defeat the Bone Collector the first time?" Grandpa laughed, and it was good to hear him chuckle. Our day had been filled with uncertainty, and the last 2 days had felt like a lifetime. We had lived under the shadow of that hulking beast, and now we were coming back into the sun again, so to speak. As the canopy of stars opened up above us, I sighed in relief as I let the sounds of the Appalachian mountains by night waft over me. I collapsed after I had finished with my warden. My energy was all but gone. The snake handler came to check on me after checking that his bag was closed, and as he loomed over me, I wasn't sure if he was gonna kill me or help me up. He was a rough customer, but I guess he was more rugged than rough looking back. He helped me up and asked if I was okay and told me I was lucky to be alive. I asked if he was the one who had helped my grandmother and I all those years ago, and he said that it had been him. He was sorry to hear about my grandma, but he was glad to see that I was keeping the family business alive. He told me next time to know my limits before taking on something like that. He claimed he had just been passing by at the right time, but I think he might have been waiting for the Bone Collector or something like it. He knew he would be needed, and he stayed close all those years so he could help when the time was right. That's always stuck with me, and I knew then that I had some growing to do. When I got home and found my draft orders from the government, I knew that this was the chance I had been waiting for. I returned from war a much better man, and I strove to learn as much as possible so I would never need to lean on anyone again like that. Glimmer squeezed my hand, giggling a little but keeping silent as we walked towards the house. It was clear that this hadn't been the last time Grandpa had leaned on someone, but Glimmer was okay with letting him have his moment. The house was much the same as we had left it, but the front porch looked like a tree had fallen on it. The roof had fallen in, and the left wall was a mass of splintered wood. The whole thing had spilled into the yard, and it was a sad sight at the end of such a long day. Grandpa's house had always seemed like a rock in the middle of an ocean of uncertainty. I had never thought that it too might be damaged in our struggles. Grandpa put a hand on the wall, stroking the wood as if it were a loved one he'd had to watch suffer. He didn't cry, but the look of abject sadness that stretched his face was awful to see. How many nights had we sat out here and drank as we listened to the crickets or listened to one of Grandpa's stories? How many stories had I heard from the chairs that were now laying beneath so much rubble? Glimmer and I watched him as he mourned until I just couldn't take it anymore. "We'll fix it up, Gramps." He turned to look at me as though he hadn't quite understood what I'd said. "We can fix it. We can rebuild the porch. It'll be good as new. We can start tomorrow. Hell, we can start tonight if you want. It'll be okay, Gramps." Grandpa looked at me for a few seconds, his agony splitting into a smile that made him wrinkle his face and almost made him look normal again. He nodded, his eyes shining in the moonlight. "Sure, kid. We can make it better than it was before if we want. Since this is your house too now, you can put your own mark on it." We started making plans that very night, Glimmer staying until well past midnight. When it was time to leave, she let me walk her out this time. I wasn't too long, but we definitely took a few minutes for ourselves, and I promised I'd meet her the next night for a late-night stroll. When I returned, I found Grandpa asleep on the couch, the mug of cocoa he'd had almost spilling on the floor. I picked him up and put him to bed. We could start on the porch tomorrow. It took us 4 weeks, but it was ready just in time for Halloween. Grandpa and I built, sanded, painted, and put the finishing touches on it before the first trick-or-treaters ever wandered up. Glimmer came to help sometimes, mostly just showing up at sunset to spend time with Grandpa and I. We had taken several walks after sunset, and though she still called me Hunter, she often used my real name when we were together. As Grandpa sat on the porch and handed out candy to smiling superheroes and laughing princesses, he had the biggest smile I'd ever seen him wear. Grandpa was in his element, and there was no question whether he liked the addition to the house. This reminds me of a Halloween after I'd come back from war. I was sitting out here handing out candy when I looked up to see a little boy in a ghost costume. He was shaking his bag at me, silent as the grave, as he begged for sweets. But I was really focused on my bottle tree and how it was shivering. I looked around for the boy's parents, but he was alone. That wasn't uncommon. Lots of parents let their kids roam around during Halloween. The difference in this kid was the blood that I saw drying on the hem of his costume. Some of the kids had stopped to listen to his story, but they all jumped when a voice from behind them gave Grandpa pause.
Are you telling the story about the little ghost boy again?
Glimmer stepped out of the woods, her silver hair in a long braid and her dress a silvery sparkle of moonlight as she came to sit beside me on the porch. She looked otherworldly as she sparkled there. "What a costume," one of the mothers said. "I'd love to know where you got it from." As Glimmer explained how she had made it herself, I reflected upon my year with Grandpa. As Glimmer laid her head against my shoulder, I wondered what sort of surprises next year would bring with them, and what sort of adventures Grandpa might find to get us into this time. Who knew how much more I might discover by next Halloween? Good evening, everyone. It's me, Dr. Plague. Thank you so much for joining me for tonight's story. Well, that's it. The climax of Appalachian Grandpa's The Bone Collector. I hope you've enjoyed this trip to Appalachia as much as I have, and hope you've enjoyed this extended visit with Grandpa just before it's time to ring in the Halloween season. That's right. Starting next week, it'll be a different Halloween story every week, of which, like usual, you, the watchers, will be voting on. Keep an eye peeled for upcoming polls so you can vote on your favorites and listen to the stories that you'd like to hear. This will all be leading up to the release of my latest book, Fall Frights and Winter Chills, so keep an eye peeled for that as well. If you've been enjoying the show and you'd like to keep watching, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Maybe go ahead and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the spooky fun we have coming up. If you'd like to support the show in a more monetary way, I always suggest you come on down to Patreon. For just $5 a month, you can enjoy getting your spooky a day early on a Tuesday or a Thursday, as well as having your name read out at the end of every TikTok and every YouTube video that I do. There's a link to that and a link to my Amazon profile down below so you can find all the books that I write and maybe read along with us on our Wednesday stories. Before we go, let's go ahead and thank our patrons. Thanks to Janet for being our Spooky Skeleton tier contributor. Thanks to Xaronana, Emily Coltsfoot, Leslie Lou Riddle, Martha, and Mary Ann Schuler for being our Ghostly Reader tier contributors. Thanks so much, everyone. We just couldn't do the show without you. Keep in mind that those in the Ghostly Reader tier also get a book every time I write one, signed and on their doorstep. So, if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, come on down. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.